Listen, my pretty fair knight, I'm glad to meet you here, for it's on this lonely mountain your beauty shines. Your beauty shines so. Your beauty shines so clear.
Hi everyone, I'm Celeste. Welcome to my BookTube channel. Well, the days are getting shorter, colder, night is coming sooner in the afternoons, and we're heading towards the winter solstice. And last year around this time on my BookTube channel, I did do a video vlog on perfect books for wintering, dark winter nights, and solstice. So I thought I would follow up and do another one of those since it's the same time of December again. And so I have a few titles, not an awful lot, but some to share with you. First of all, I did want to mention that the music I used in the opening is from a wonderful collection by the singer Sheila Chandra. And I first learned about Sheila Chandra from my sister and also from a dance class that I used to take. And she has several CDs, well, CDs, I'm dating myself, you see how old I am. But I do have the CDs, but one is A Bone, a Crone, a Drone, and the other one is from something called the Enchantment. And her music is just so introspective and haunting. And I just love listening to it at any time of year, but particularly at this time of year as the days grow short and you just want to be cozy and stay inside. And it's really marvelous. So I'll try to post a link below, but do check it out. Sheila Chandra. And then I wanted to share a number of books with you. So the first couple actually, I need to thank Mercy from Mercy's Bookish Musings, because I got these titles from her. She did a fantastic video in the fall with all titles for fall and winter as the days are growing dark. And so thank you, Mercy. I took you up on quite a few of your suggestions, and so some of the titles are in my TBR pile and some of them I'm going to share with you here. The first of those is a novella / novel called Moon of the Crusted Snow by Waubgeshig Rice. And Waubgeshig Rice is an author who comes from Canada, and I went to college in Canada, the University of Toronto. Waubgeshig Rice has written a really interesting dystopian story about a small community in Northern Ontario. The central character is a man called Evan Whitesky. And Evan Whitesky is a young blue-collar worker who lives on a reservation in Northern Ontario, like far Northern Ontario, sort of in the middle of nowhere. And he drives a truck and works on the reservation as many of his neighbors do and family members. And this is a story about late fall, early winter coming on one year, and suddenly the power grid goes out. Cell phones aren't working, TVs aren't working. They have to put generators on and all of that. And so they don't really know what's going on, but it's happened before because oftentimes they don't get very good quality facilities and services to the reservations so far up north. And so they don't really think that much of it, but then the days start to go by and the snow starts falling and winter keeps coming closer and closer and begins. And they realize that something is definitely off, something is definitely wrong, but they kind of lose contact with the outside world. And it's kind of an interesting study in small group dynamics about how people in a small community that's remote sort of come together. They're Anishinaabe, and so they have their own traditions and customs, and some of them kind of fall back upon those or reinvest themselves in those, I guess is a much better way to put it. And it's also interesting, two of the young male members of the community were down south at college, and they come back home on their snowmobiles, and they're really emotionally a mess, and they say that everything's going wrong in the larger cities as well, and they're also without power and without cell phones. The whole infrastructure is breaking down, and the days are dark and increasingly cold, and so they're cut off from food supplies, and they really need to use their innovation to keep going and to keep sane and to keep calm. And then in the storyline, a white man follows the two college boys home on his own snowmobile, and then the group dynamics kind of shift and change, and allegiances change, and he's an influence on some of them. And it's dark, it's dystopian. It's also very quiet. It's sort of slow in a way, a very quiet, slow novel or novella. But at the same time, I found it fascinating, and I learned a lot about the Anishinaabe in this dystopian setting. I would highly recommend it. It was a page turner for me, and even though it was very quiet, if you're looking for something where this happened and then this happened and then suddenly this happened and every chapter ends on a cliffhanger, you might not like this. This may not be the novel for you, but if you're willing to invest in kind of a quiet slice of life dystopian story set in Northern Ontario, I would highly recommend this. And I'm really looking forward to reading more by Waubgeshig. I understand he has a follow-up to this, which is a full-length novel, and I think that's called Moon of the Turning Leaves. So yeah, Moon of the Crusted Snow by Waubgeshig. So thank you, Mercy, for that recommendation. And then another recommendation from Mercy, from Mercy's Bookish Musings, was Stolen by Ann-Helén Laestadius. This was also really good. It's the story of a little girl. It's a coming-of-age story, and her name is Elsa. And this takes place above the Arctic Circle. And it's a story of a girl who is part of the Sami, who are an indigenous people who are often treated as second-class citizens in the far north of Sweden and other places. And traditionally, their families are reindeer herders. And so this follows Elsa's journey from when she's, I think, 9 years old. And at the beginning, she is out on her parents' land on her skis, and she witnesses a man from a nearby village slaughtering some of her family's reindeer and mutilating them and being very cruel, like not just poaching, but being purposely mutilating and cruel in killing them. And he sort of threatens her, and it's also a sort of view of their life, everyday life, and the problems that they face. So the Sami people, it's really interesting to learn about their family traditions, their food, their clothing, what it's like to be an outsider in your own country, the bigotry and prejudice that they face when these killings occur. The police don't react, they don't do anything about it, they don't really consider it to be a crime. It's a novel about identity. It's also a novel about climate change and how that affects traditional work, such as the reindeer herding of the Sami people, because with climate change, the reindeer, well, when it snows and the ground freezes, and then there starts to be suddenly a dramatic thaw, and it rains, and everything turns to groundwater, but because the ground is so hard, and it happens so quickly, the ground can't absorb the water, and then it refreezes and becomes a thick layer of ice. And normally the reindeer can forage and fend for themselves, but because of climate change and what it does to covering up the vegetation with the thick layers of ice, they can't forage, and then the Sami people are forced to feed them, and at the same time people are shooting their herds and mistreating the people, and so it's just all about that. The thing I find really fascinating that the author does so well is she really has an eye for details, the smallest details, so you really know what it's like to look through the eyes of Elsa at the world and to see what she's seeing and sensing with all of her senses. So for example, the snow crusting on her mittens, or what it's like for the snow to fly up when she's on her kick sled going really quickly along. What it's like to go to a school that used to be a sort of a state-run school for Indigenous peoples where they were often mistreated. She talks about linguistic differences between different groups of people. And as the novel progresses, she grows up and she decides that she's going to address the poaching and slaughtering crimes once and for all. So I'm actually almost done with it. I'm not quite done, but I feel like I'm done enough with it that I can speak to it. I really enjoyed this. I think it could have been maybe a little shorter. She goes into a lot of detail, a lot of home scenes and things like that. So you really feel like you know Elsa and her family at the end of the novel. But maybe it could have been a little bit shorter, and you would have still gotten the same sense and ideas and so forth and the essence of the writing. But it was really, really good, and I'm looking forward to reading more by Ann-Helén Laestadius. She has another one out, which is about growing up in one of those state-supported schools. So I'm really looking forward to that one as well. I found her writing very compelling. So again, thank you, Mercy, for this recommendation. It was a perfect novel for this time of year, especially. And then I also recently bought several books by the author Kiran Millwood Hargrave. And I've never read anything by Kiran Millwood Hargrave. And it's interesting because once I started to learn about the author and her oeuvre of writing, I snapped up about 4 of the books and actually shelled out a fair amount of money. And I never really do that when I'm unsure of an author or I've never read their work before, but there was just something about her books which really resonated with me. And so I've recently purchased several books by her. I ordered The Way Past Winter by Kiran Millwood Hargrave, and this is a mid-grade fantasy. I had originally from a local bookstore ordered one that had a different cover. It was a green cover. I'll post it here in the video, which I found just stunning. But unfortunately, he had ordered the wrong one for me. But I really like this cover as well. I think it's also beautiful in its own way. And so basically, this is the story of a girl named Mila. And she loves her home, her forest, and her sled dog. She lives in a wintry world with her 2 sisters and their brother Oscar. And ever since their father mysteriously disappeared several years before, it's always winter, never spring, sort of like in Narnia. And one day, strangers arrive at their home, and the next morning they've disappeared and they've taken her little brother Oscar with them. And so the story is about how Mila decides to travel north on a quest to rescue her brother, and it's the story of all the adventures that she has along the way. And I'm going to read you the back cover here. Someone said, "I love curling up on a snowy night with The Way Past Winter. Kiran captures all the magic of a classic fairy tale, the story of strong sisters, a shape-shifting bear, eternal winter, parents' mistakes, and stolen children." And apparently it combines it with beautiful writing and a wintry folk tale feel. And all of that sounds really perfect, in my opinion, for winter. So I'm there for it. So I'm really looking forward to reading this book. Kiran Millwood Hargrave has written both children's books, mid-grade books, and adult books. And I'm just sort of looking forward to reading all of them, even though I've never read any of them. So I hope I'm not horribly disappointed. I don't think I will be, but I do love this cover. It's really pretty. But I do want the green one with the outline of Mila on it. So yeah, The Way Past Winter. And then another author that I purchased several books from at once and hadn't read anything by her before is the author Nancy Campbell. And so I purchased 2 books by her. She's an editor and author. And the first one is called Nature Tales for Winter Nights, edited by Nancy Campbell. Isn't that a beautiful cover? And so I'll just read you the inside flap on this one. Look at the end papers. Lovely marbling in a lovely sort of Arctic blue. And this says, "From the late days of autumn through deepest cold and toward the bright hope of spring, here is a collection of familiar names and dazzling new discoveries. Join the naturalist Linnaeus traveling on horseback in Lapland. Witness frost fairs on the Thames and witch hazel harvesting in Connecticut. Experience alpine adventure, polar bird myths, and courtship in the snow in classical Japan and ancient Rome. Observations from Beth Chatto's garden and Tove Jansson's childhood join company with artists' private letters, lines from Anne Frank's diary, and fireside stories told by indigenous voices. As the evening draws in, a time of reckoning, rest, and restoration, immerse yourself in this new seasonal anthology. It's a treasure trove that puts winter, rural, wild, and urban, under the microscope and reveals its wonder. A hibernation companion, this book will transport you across time and country, bringing a little magic to every winter night. So I'm there for that as well. I think the part about witnessing frost fairs on the Thames sounds fascinating, as does witch hazel harvesting in Connecticut. So just a quick glance through the table of contents. There are little entries here by Charlotte Bronte, Joy Harjo, Virginia Woolf, Tove Jansson, and then there are Inuit folk tales. There is a passage from Dorothy Wordsworth's journals. What else? A poem by John Clare, who's one of my favorites, and much more. So they're really just little snippets. This would be a wonderful bedside book on a winter's night, because you can just read little snippets here and there. So that's that one. And then another book by Nancy Campbell that I found on Blackwell's, because you know when you go to a bookstore website and you pull up one book by the author, you get other suggestions. This one is called 50 Words for Snow by Nancy Campbell, and it's kind of shining in the light there, but it's foiled, so it's really pretty. This is a delightful compendium that brings together language, culture, and adventure through frozen landscapes. It says, snow. Every language has its own words for the magical, mesmerizing flakes that fall from the sky. In this exquisite exploration, writer and Arctic traveler Nancy Campbell digs deep into the meanings of 50 words for snow. In Japanese, we encounter Yuki Onna, a snow woman who drifts through the frosted land. In Icelandic, it is Hunslapadrifa. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Snowflakes as big as a dog's paw that softly blanket the streets. And in Maori, we meet Hukarere, one of the children of rain and wind. It just sounds really evocative, really fascinating, really poetic. And another one that would be a great one as a bedside companion for long, dark winter nights. So that one is also by Nancy Campbell. This one is kind of a strange one. It's more of an academic nonfiction book, and it's by the author Peter Davidson. This is called The Idea of North, and you can see that there. I'm just going to read a little bit of this blurb for you. From the Old Norse sagas to the fairy tales of Hans Christian Andersen, from the films of Bergman to the paintings of Eric Ravilius, from Nabokov's Zembla to Simon Armitage's Yorkshire, Davidson finds that the North is a breeding ground for ghosts, a place of exile and punishment, the antithesis of human, yet its bleak landscapes have inspired poetry of great beauty. Ice, crystal, diamond, and glass all blur in recurring images. So it's basically kind of an academic treatise on many cultures' concepts of what it means to be North. Hibernation, snow, ice, isolation, exile, Vikings, Anglo-Saxons, polar nights, all that sort of thing, as manifested in art, poetry, music, film, and more. And I would say the tone, he's a fellow of Oxford, and I have a feeling this was used as a class textbook. It's not written in the style of popular nonfiction, which is super accessible to the average person. Many may find the tone a bit dry for such exciting subject matter, but if you can sort of get beyond that academic prose or the tone that he has, there's a lot of really fascinating philosophical observation in here, and he does pepper it throughout with photographs, albeit they're in black and white. This would make a great large coffee table book, but I think it's worthwhile reading. I'm not sure if it's one I actually need to own, although I am getting a lot out of it. So I hate to, relegate it to get it out of the library, but maybe look online and read a passage from it and see what you think of it before purchasing. I do love this cover though. And I learned about this book. Let me just grab my notes here because I want to make sure I give credit where credit is due. So this, where is it? I learned about this from a channel which was called Folk Embroidery, I want to say. Let me take a look. Modern Folk Embroidery. And that's a channel here on YouTube. But apparently, just like we have BookTube, when you have a group of people who do embroidery, they call it floss tube, like embroidery floss, which I think is wonderful. And the guy that hosts the channel is Jacob. He grew up in Friesland, which is one of the northern provinces of the Netherlands. He does lovely textile arts. Sometimes he shares books, he shares songs, he shares games, all kinds of cultural things. And I'll post his channel down below as well because I just found him fascinating. So there's one thing that I would like to print out and play myself. He offered a PDF of an old game called Game of the Goose, where you roll dice and move your marker along. I think he recommended this book. After all of that huge buildup, I think he is the one where I heard this from. It was quite a while ago. But yeah, Iceland, winter, the aurora borealis, all these different concepts of north that people have and how that fuels our imagination. So that's the idea of north. And then finally, this is a book that I found secondhand on eBay. It only cost me a few dollars. I thought it was really neat. It's a very quick read. It's by a woman called Rosemary Verey, and this is called The Garden in Winter. And it came in this plastic sleeve, but I thought it was kind of a fascinating topic because so often we on BookTube love gardening books, but seasonally we always talk about them in the context of spring and summer and possibly fall. This is specifically looking at appreciating and viewing the garden in the desolate months, in the months when things are not in bloom, and appreciating more the shadows, the architectural shapes with snow drifted on it, the shadows that are created by that. Let me see if I can find some photographs here. She makes the argument that the garden is just as beautiful at this time of year as in the summer. So she also, it's definitely a gardening book, and it kind of goes beyond my expertise as a gardener. What am I saying? I don't even have any expertise as a gardener. But even things like the reflection of ice and water So this might be a fun one to find used for a few dollars on eBay or one of those sites, or, you know, to find at the library. This one I love. Look at that. You know, medieval knot gardens and mazes and things like that, hedgerows, winter birds, berries, things of that nature. So The Garden in Winter by Rosemary Verey. I just thought that was kind of neat, and there's the image on the back cover. So that's it for today. Just checking in with you and sharing the sort of wintering, cozy books for dark nights and solstice that I've been interested in lately. What are you reading? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll be back with another video, I hope, fairly soon, and we'll see you again real soon. So, bye-bye.